Today, I'm doing a part 2 of the Premier League being completely randomised in FC24. And today we're going to be going 5 years in the future. To remind you where we left off last video, we're at the end of Season 1. And this is how the table was looking at the end of this season. Man United, Bournemouth and Sheffield United getting relegated. Liverpool winning the league. Fulham, Forest and Spurs getting Champions League, and Burnley getting Europa League. So what will be interesting to see is how the relegated teams perform in the Championship, how the newly promoted Championship teams perform in this Premier League, because they don't have any random players. They still have all their players. But if you remember from the first video, I imposed a transfer ban to every team. So they'll still have all their original players, barring any players that have retired or gone back to their original clubs from when they were on loan. And it will be interesting to see how the teams in European competitions fare, because they'll have extra fixture congestion, which the other teams won't have. And just before we jump forward, I want to say that I will be streaming this save. I'm going to be starting from the start of Season 1, and I'm going to pick one of the teams in the Premier League, and then we're going to play this through, but while I'm controlling one of the teams. So make sure you're subscribed if you want to see those streams, because you'll get the notifications when I go live, and tune in to see which team I've picked. But anyway, let's jump forward now to the end of Season 2. So now we are at the 1st of June 2025, and obviously I chose a League 2 team again to sim forward, because I didn't want to influence the Premier League in any way. So now let's look at the table and see how it looks this year. And this year, Brentford won it. Brentford do have Haaland up front, so I'm wondering, did he actually perform this year and actually get a few goals? Then Liverpool finishing second after winning it last year, Brighton finishing third, Fulham fourth getting Champions League again, and City fifth in the Europa League with their centre mid that started at 55. But Everton and Newcastle look like they moved up as well, but Spurs have dropped down a bit. I think Brighton and Brentford are the big winners out of this though. And then getting relegated are Chelsea, Leicester and Middlesbrough. So Middlesbrough, Leicester and Leeds were the ones that came off in the Championship, and two of them have gone back down, but Leeds survived. Then Burnley, who got into the Champions League last year, they're finishing 12th, so bit of a fall off from them. Newcastle again though, I think underperforming again. But now let's manage a Premier League team and look at the stats in more detail. So looking at that team, I'm not surprised Brentford did win the league, because they've got some very good players in there. 2 players over 90, especially with Haaland being a 94. 2 high 80s with Alisson and Van Dijk, and then Reece James on an 86. Joelinton as well, wonder if he was top scorer again this year. So Brentford have a good team. But now let's take a look at the top scorers and see who actually was there. And I expect it to be Erling Haaland. And it wasn't Haaland. Haaland's not... Joelinton was Brentford's top scorer again. He got 20 goals. What is Haaland doing? Dan Juma for Spurs got 26 goals. What is going on? Isak and Calvert-Lewin up there again, which is not surprising. Son, not a surprise. But why is Haaland not scoring any goals? Haaland only got 11 goals. He played every game as well. So why is Erling Haaland not scoring? I don't understand this. 94 rated striker. He's played every game and scored 11 goals. While Joelinton, a centre mid playing out on the left wing, scoring 20. What's going on? Going to take a quick look at Brighton as well, because they improved quite a lot. And that team isn't too bad. It's mostly 80s, and especially the defence. The defence is quite good. And Nkunku up front is good as well, even though he's -3. Because he's a centre forward, not a striker. But, I mean, at 87, that's not mattering too much, is it? So I'm not surprised Brighton finished where they did. And now let's take a quick look at Chelsea, and not massively surprised they got relegated. They got a couple of 80s, but they're also mostly 70s and some low 70s as well. And I'm especially looking at the defence, not a single 80 there. And if we look at the goals conceded though, they conceded a lot, but not necessarily the most in the league. Out of the bottom 6, they did concede joint least. And the last team we're going to quickly look at is Newcastle. And I don't know why all their players are so tired. Oh, they must have been in the FA Cup final. I completely forgot to look at that. Let's look at the cups. So as you saw there, Newcastle did win the FA Cup final. So at least they did something with their really good team. And Arsenal won the Carabao Cup final, beating Bournemouth. Now if we look at the European competitions, Barca beat Roma in the Super Cup, but don't care about that. No Premier League teams. The Champions League final is going to be between Atletico Madrid and AC Milan, but don't care about that. No Premier League teams. Just look at the furthest the Premier League team got. And no Premier League teams actually progressed out of the group stage. Spurs finished at the bottom of their group. Fulham finished 3rd in their group. Liverpool finished 3rd in their group. And then Forest finished bottom of their group. So now we look at Europa League, and Liverpool lost in the final to Dortmund. So Liverpool must have got relegated into the Europa League after being maybe one of the best performers in the Champions League who didn't qualify for the knockout round. Then Fulham also made it into the Europa League, but got knocked out in the round of 16. And then Burnley lost to Athletic Bilbao in the preliminary round. And then Newcastle were out in the round of 16 in the Conference League, but I can't remember why they were in that. Maybe they won a cup last year or something. But now we've done that little tangent, I'll come back to looking at Liverpool's team, and still very high rated, still should have been doing better than it did. But now I've been through all of that in detail in Season 2. I'm going to go through Season 3 and 4 quickly, just show you where teams finish in the league and cup winners, and then we'll go more into detail again when we get to Season 5. So now we're at the 14th of June 2026 at the end of season 3, and I advanced a couple of weeks further because I wanted to make sure all the competitions are finished, and not like last season where the Champions League final hadn't happened yet. So let's take a look at the Premier League table. So this year Liverpool win it again, and Newcastle have finally done something with their squad and they've come second in the league. Still should have won it, but it's a big improvement. Then Brighton finishing third again, Everton making an improvement and finishing fourth, and Brentford tailing off a bit from last year, but still finishing in the Europa League spot. And then Sheffield United and Bournemouth, I'm pretty sure they got relegated in season 1, so coming back up and finishing 6th and 7th in season 3 is impressive. And then Man United, Nottingham Forest and Luton Town getting relegated. So Man U must have been the other team that came back up and they've gone straight back down. So Forest, after finishing the Champions League spot in the first season, are relegated in season 3. So looking at the other competitions, Brentford got the furthest in the Champions League, getting knocked out in the quarterfinals. Newcastle got the furthest in the Europa League, getting knocked out in the round of 16. And Man City got the furthest in the Conference League, getting knocked out in the round of 16. And Brentford won the FA Cup, beating Newcastle. And Everton beat Liverpool in the Carabao Cup final. That would have been a big game for them, and they delivered. And then Joelinton was still the top goal scorer in the Premier League. What is going on with this guy? How is he scoring so many and Haaland isn't? At least this year, Haaland made it onto the top scorers list in 19th place, scoring 13. And it looks like Bournemouth did a lot better this year because they were actually playing Saka, Martinelli and Gakpo. But now, let's advance forward to season 4. So now we are at the end of season 4 and Bournemouth have won the Premier League this year. After getting relegated in season 1, they've won the Premier League. And I think I said, if I remember correctly, that if they played Saka, Martinelli and Gakpo in the season they got relegated, they probably will be a Champions League team. And this year they won the league. Then Spurs getting back into the Champions League, Liverpool 3rd, Brentford 4th, so they're still up there, and Sheffield United claiming a European spot after finishing 6th or 7th last year, I think. So I think we're seeing the league start to even out a bit. Same teams finishing in and around the top. But Liverpool this year finishing 14th. I've not even looked at the relegation zone. Liverpool, after always being up there, now finishing 14th. And then relegated are Leeds, Wolves and West Brom. And Arsenal finishing 17th. I feel like they've been higher as well. So Man City won the FA Cup, beating Aston Villa in the final. And Newcastle won the Carabao Cup, beating Brentford. So Newcastle again winning something with their super team, but they're yet to win the Premier League, which is really what I expect Newcastle should be doing. Everton were the team that made it first in the Champions League, getting knocked out by Barcelona in the round of 16. Brighton made it all the way to the final of the Europa League, but couldn't win it, losing to Ajax. And in the Conference League, Bournemouth got knocked out in the preliminary round. And this year, Haaland finally managed to score the most goals for Brentford and was top scorer in the Premier League. It's only taken 4 years, but Erling Haaland is back. Joelinton, though, still getting 15 goals, so he still scored his fair share, but not near the top of the top scorers chart this time. I'm shocked it's taken 4 years for Haaland to finally pull his finger out and actually play like Erling Haaland. But now let's move on to Season 5, where we're going to go a bit more in detail, going to look more at the teams again, and see what's changed, like their starting lineups, players have retired, and see if any regens or youth players have come into the teams. And this is how the Premier League's looking at the end of Season 5, and Spurs do win it this year. They've been up there a few times, so it's not a surprise to me they've won it. And Liverpool recovering after their bad season last year and finishing 2nd. Brentford and City still finishing up there, and so are Newcastle, but Newcastle dropping off a bit and still not winning the league. Then get relegated to Chelsea, Leicester and Norwich. But this time, Man United get back in the Premier League and actually managed to stay up. I think Chelsea have come back up and gone straight back down, or maybe survived 1 year and then gone back down. I can't remember when they got relegated. Now let's look at this title-winning Spurs side. And the team's not awful. Decent defence. Midfield's a bit weak and then a decent attack, so I gotta say I'm a little surprised they won the league, but it's not crazy. And they did only win it by a point, but with a very good defence. But also not scoring many goals, so they might have been a bit boring to watch. And then this is Liverpool's team who finished in 2nd, and this is much stronger. How did these finish like 15th last year? Their only weaknesses are Castagna and Sanson. Other than that, their team is very strong. Then this is the team of 3rd place Brentford, and this is also very strong. Endo is really their only weak link. The defence is declining a bit, I think, because of Van Dijk going down a bit, so he must be getting old. And also, if I'm not mistaken, I think they had Alisson in the net beforehand, who must have retired because they now have Vicario, but he's good as well. So Brentford also have a very strong team. So after looking at Liverpool and Brentford, I'm surprised Spurs did win the league, actually. Now looking at 4th place Man City, and they've got a good defence. 74 in goal, so not amazing, and they've got standout players, but overall they do have weak spots. Like that player who was a 55 centre mid is now only a 70, but still not an awful team. And now looking at Newcastle, their team is still very strong. These are going to be the biggest underperformers of the experiment. I mean, they have won an FA Cup, and maybe they won a Carabao Cup as well, I can't remember. And they did reach another FA Cup final, I think. And they finished in the Champions League spots a few times, but with this team, you got to win the Premier League, come on. Then finally, I'm looking at Chelsea because they got relegated, and that's not a surprise. Willy Bolly, 66 rated at centre-back. I think that's all you need to know. I mean, in other parts of the team, they're not too weak, but I think Bolly is a weak link there, and that would have cost him, I think. But Joelinton at Brentford, back to what he's been doing, being joint top goal scorer this season. 4 players on 18 goals as well. And Haaland back to his old ways, although not quite as severely, but only getting 17 goals this year. And now looking at the cup competitions, and Leeds actually won the FA Cup, who were a championship team at the start of the save and weren't even considered when I randomised all the players. So that's interesting. Spurs beating Bournemouth in the Carabao Cup. Brentford were the team who made it furthest in the Champions League, reaching the round of 16. Spurs were the team who made it furthest in the Europa League, reaching the quarterfinals. And Brighton made it all the way to the semi-finals in the Conference League. And to finish this video, I'm just going to look at all the regens and youth players in the Premier League so we can get an idea of what the future of the league's going to be. And this guy already, Augustin Mercier, looks like a monster. 6'6", decent pace, 92 strength, and he's got good defensive stats as well. 90 heading accuracy at 6'6", with 93 jumping. This man's going to be a menace from corners. So I think he's probably part of the reason Sheffield United are doing so well. Then Reeves at Fulham, he looks like a decent player as well. Then I actually saw this guy already when I looked at Man City, but he's sitting in the reserves. And then we've got some other decent players. Some of these are probably playing for their teams. I just looked at the Sheffield United's asking price for this guy as well. 86 mil, that's ridiculous. They have sorted by age as well. This guy is 72 at 17, so he looks like he could be quite a good player in the future as well. Then a couple of guys here in the mid-low 70s at 18, not too bad. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on these guys if we move forward and do a part 3 of this video and see if any of these are helping their teams move up the table. But anyway, that is where I'm going to end this video. So if you do want to see a part 3 of this, leave a like so I know you want that, because I think this is poised well for a part 3, because it'll be interesting to see what happens, say, 5 more years in the future after 10 years of this. So if you don't want to miss it if I do a part 3, make sure you're subscribed as well, and I'll see you in the next one.